Hello and welcome to the Bowling University studio from the International Bowling Campus in Arlington, Texas. I'm Kelly Bednar and I'll be your host for this edition of the Bowling University Profit Break. Thanks for joining us. Our mission here at Bowling University is to enrich people's lives personally and professionally. And the Profit Break is an opportunity for sharing insights on how to grow revenue, reduce costs, and enrich yourself, your team, and your business. If you're joining the Profit Break for the first time, welcome. We're glad you're here. Give us 15 minutes and you'll be on your way to improving your profitability. On today's show, we look at increasing bowling maintenance team's performance and ultimately your profitability with some key maintenance metrics, and you can implement them today in your bowling maintenance department. So let's take a look at this often misunderstood and debated metric of frames per stop. A frames per stop is often confused because we don't look at it in the same way everywhere. So let's talk about some of the different things involved in that. So we look at a best case and a worst case scenario in a bowling center. The best case being everything running smoothly in a high performing maintenance department. Worst case, we're just chasing fires. We want to stay on top of issues before they start. So reactionary practices, centers that are chasing fires in that worst case scenario, they're always behind the eight ball. Oftentimes, it's a snowball effect. Nobody intended to get into this worst case scenario, but we got there, and how do we get out of it? It's no different than, think about your car. You know, you need to change your tires, rotate your tires, you need to change your oil in your car, and oftentimes we forget or we get lackadaisical, and next thing you know, we're on the side of the road with a flat tire because we had uneven wear on our tires. Well, our bowling pin setters, pin spotters are the same scenario. So how do we get out of that scenario and into a good top performing maintenance department? So we want to get out of this as quick as we can. So let's define what a stop is. A stop is often a topic of contention among the maintenance circles, because some people consider it to be one thing and others consider another. Well, in a little bit of homework, a little bit of studying, we figured out what the differences were. And you know, nobody's wrong, nobody's 100% right. Well, you just have to decide what's best for you. So let's talk about this for a second. It all depends on how you are using stops to measure. So there are two main thoughts of what is a stop. One, when you're measuring the guest experience, you count everything that causes the bowler to wait. Pin setters, scoring, sticky approaches, dead wood, everything gets counted. When you're measuring a machine function, you must keep track of what is a malfunction and what is not. Because some people don't track some of those things like out of ranges or deadwood, because it wasn't something that was a function of the machine, it was just something that stopped the bowler. Now, when we look at it from a machine function standpoint, an example, out of ranges wouldn't be counted. It's something to note. It's likely not a pin setter issue or pin spotter issue, but it is possibly a lane machine that's not functioning properly. So we need to still track it, but not necessarily be involved in our overall counts. Is we're trying to figure out this consistency of what is a stop. Now, when we talk about the customer service function of it all stops get counted. Why? Because even those are cleared before the guest experience delay should be part of this. Not uncommon for the experience of a team to hear a call and clear it before it ever even stops the actual bowler. Why does this matter? It still needs to get tracked and logged and counted because we're tracking for the consistency of our machines, but we're also tracking from a customer service function overall. And we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. But as a center, you need to decide which of these are important to you for your consistency and what your service you're looking to perform. So your best practice is to track in the back end and at the front desk. A stop can occur due to deadwood that the person at the front desk cleared. It could be a mechanic wasn't needed for this to be cleared. This could be a still stop, would be it's counted, but it's but the double effort keeps everybody honest. So Maybe the mechanic's trying to cheat his numbers a little bit, or maybe the front desk doesn't care. It doesn't matter. We want to keep everybody honest and on the same page, because as the leadership, whether you're the leadership of your maintenance department or the leadership of the facility, it's important that we have consistently tracked numbers. And by having both do that, we can get that done more consistently throughout. After you've done the tracking, the manager and the head mechanic review both sets of the call sheets to determine what needs the most attention. What are the first things we're going to work on to get us to the next stage of our maintenance department, best functioning of our maintenance department. And consistency is the key, as I mentioned. We want to have two people tracking it. We want to have everybody doing it the same way. So guest experience or machine function, both are completely acceptable. Not one's better than the other. You have to decide which one you're going to do and do it consistently over and over again. You can track one or the other, or both if you really wanted to, if you really want to get into the numbers, but you want to do them consistently. That's the key to getting your frames per stop moved to the next level. See, frames per stop are what we call a pillar metric. We have three pieces of the puzzle that we have to get the whole maintenance department balanced, and this is one of our pillars. You start with a basic lineage report. It's your number games bold. And then you convert that to a frames report, and you multiply the games by 11. And we all know, we've been around long enough to know that, hey, the 10 frame, on the average, some people throw 3 strikes, some people throw a spare, some people throw an open. That average, as the industry over the years, it sits right around that 11 number. So you take your games, multiply by 11, and that gives you your frames for your center. So what would be a good number of frames per stop? 100, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000? Well, wherever you are is what it is today. But let's talk about it and look at it from a guest experience standpoint. 330 frames per league pair is what the average league bowl, that's 10 people times 3 games times the 11 frames, gets us 330 frames per pair. That would be 3 stops would be 100 frames per stop. That's 1 stop per game on their pair. 3 stops per game in their field of vision. And field of vision is very important when you talk about guest experience, because that's what they can see on the pair left of them and the pair to the right of them. What are they looking at? So let's look at 500 frames per stop. That's still 2 stops per league night that they see in their field of vision. That's still a lot of notice. 1,000 frames per stop. Now we're in a number that, okay, for a lot of centers, that's pretty high. We're not anywhere close to that. Understandably, let's look at it. Each league bowler observes 1 stop per league night. This is the industry accepted league play minimum. Understand, league play minimum. A benchmark for the center is 2 stops per lane per day. If you think about that, this is the benchmark, and there's still 2 stops per lane per day. And this is what is a benchmark? The bare minimum. This is the minimal accepted if you're going to have a customer service experience that's be acceptable. So let's look at 2,000 frames per stop. At 2,000 frames per stop, this is the casual bowler minimum. So if you're a heavy league bowling, maybe you're going to be closer to the 1,000. But if you have any amount of business that's coming from the casual bowler, that 2,000 frames per stop is what the customer expects, because they expect the machines to perform. This allows for a consistent, positive time bowling experience. If you want to do time bowling, you have to be at the 2,000 frames per stop. Well, now let's take it to 5,000 frames per stop. It's a huge number. But quite honestly, anytime you get past that 2,500 mark, you're really getting a diminishing returns. It's pride. It's great to see that number up there. But at this point, when you start getting in that range of above 2,500 and towards that 5,000 frames per stop, now you can start actually pulling back your labor hours. You're going to use less labor based off the things we talk about in other profit breaks about the labor hour calculation. And you also have much less part spending, because if you're getting to this point, your machines are performing so well that you're staying ahead of it. You're getting ahead of the game, and now you can actually make sure that parts are being used appropriately and functionally. So remember I mentioned the 3 pillars of bowling maintenance. Those 3 bowling pillars are labor. We just talked about how you can adjust your labor because this pillar is working well. Parts and hardware and supplies budget, that's your parts budget. As I just mentioned, you can pull back on spending in your parts budget because your frames per stop are now working well. The opposite is true. Your frames per stop is kind of the dictation of what's going to happen. It's your metric that you're gauging everything from. If your frames per stop are low, you're going to have to be spending a little more on labor to get those frames per stop high, or spending more on parts and labor. We want to make sure we get this all into a balance on those 3 legs of the stool. We want to get our frames per stop at a good number, let's call it 1,500, maybe 2,000 for the guest experience, but we don't want to do it by spending a whole bunch of money on labor or parts and hardware. So this process takes a while. It's not something that happens overnight. So you see, centers with strong maintenance programs spend less on their maintenance than centers that don't have a strong maintenance program. When you don't have a plan in place, and you don't have a budget in place, and you don't have a target of shooting for a certain frames per stop, you oftentimes get into a situation where you're spending more money because you're having parts shipped in, you're having to chase fires, and you're maybe even having to staff more in the back end because you're getting 70, 80 calls a night versus a 2 or 3 in a given night. So we need to be looking at that as we go along the process. So what I've covered here very quickly in a quick profit break is covered in much more detail in 3 of our courses: establishing bowling maintenance metrics, implementing and tracking bowling maintenance metrics, and measuring bowling maintenance metrics. All 3 together create a nice program for you to put together in your center to take wherever you are today. Don't get the envy of where everybody else is. Just know it takes time. It happens over a longer period of time than just in one day. So you want to be looking at sending both your maintenance team, maybe your maintenance supervisor. If you are a maintenance supervisor, you should be taking these courses. Or if you're a owner, leadership, manager of your center, you want to take these courses together to understand what that looks like to get your maintenance department to the next level. Because in maintenance department, there's money being lost back there in the back. So with that, I want to thank you guys all today for joining us as part of the morning profit break, as we wrap up another edition of the Bowling University Profit Break. Remember that when your focus is on growing people, people will grow your business. We look forward to seeing you next time for another great episode. If you have any questions about today's show or would like additional information, you can reach us at any time at education@bpaa.com. Also, all previous Profit Break episodes are available 24/7 for you and your team to watch at bowlinguniversity.net. Plus, new Profit Break episodes are available every month. So mark your calendar, watch your emails, and join us on Facebook to hear about the latest episodes. Until then, I'm Kelly Bednar, and do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. See you next time.